So you're thinking about moving to Kansas City, you've pulled up the map, you type in Kansas City in the search bar, and 2 Kansas Cities pull up, one on the Missouri side, one on the Kansas side, and you are just super confused which one is which. Well, in this video, we're gonna be breaking down some of the key differences between both areas, and we're getting after it right now. Let me just start off by saying that I grew up here, and I told everybody when I lived in Denver for 10 years that I was from Kansas City, even though I grew up in Johnson County on the Kansas side. Olathe is where I spent most of my time. And when people ask me, where are you from? Or, where did you live before here? I didn't tell them Olathe, I told them Kansas City. So the most important thing that you need to realize is whether you live on the Kansas or the Missouri side, it's all encompassing and surrounding Kansas City, Missouri. That is the main Kansas City. When you're thinking about Kansas City, it's where most of the sports teams are, it's where our airport is, and it's where the main downtown is, City Market, the Country Club Plaza, even though that gets a little confusing because the Country Club District really encompasses both the Kansas and the Missouri side as well. So, it gets blurred a little bit, but you don't really need to worry about it. Ultimately, what it comes down to is what makes the most sense for your family. I didn't even know some of the stuff I'm going to share with you. It's frankly a little bit embarrassing why there are 2 Kansas Cities. The reason being is that when Kansas City, Missouri became an incorporated city, the folks in Kansas were so upset that they used their state's name in the city name for Kansas City, Missouri, that out of sheer pettiness, they named their city Kansas City. So you have a Kansas City, Kansas, and a Kansas City, Missouri for that reason, apparently. Again, I grew up here. I spent 20 plus years here before I relocated to Denver for about a decade. And I didn't know that until about a week ago when I was doing some research for this video. So don't get too caught up in the Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri argument. Now, there are people here that get passionate about it. I don't really understand it. I mean, I guess I do a little bit because now I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and I do have, I guess, more Kansas City pride being a part of the actual Kansas City because I grew up in the suburbs, and it's just a completely different experience. And a lot of my tax dollars go to public transportation, city services, and sports teams, stuff like that, I guess helps you, or I guess it makes you a little more prideful of where you actually live if you're taking part in that. Now, we're going to get a little more into the affordability and the taxes and the implications of the public school systems and all of those things, because that does matter. And depending where you end up, there's some crucial information that you're going to want to know. But before we go any further, my name's Kyle. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in Kansas City. I'm licensed in Kansas and Missouri. So if this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about what it's like to eat, sleep, live, and play in Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri, then hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell to make sure you're notified every time we release a new video. We honestly get calls, texts, emails every single day from people who are relocating here. That's why we make these videos. So if you're considering relocating to, buying or selling a home in Kansas City, whether it be Kansas or Missouri, shoot us a text, call, email, day or night. We got your back with moving to KC. Okay, so you probably know by now, if you've done any research about moving here, that state line pretty much divides Kansas City right down the middle. And Kansas City, Missouri is comprised of 3 separate counties: Clay County, which is the furthest north, Jackson County, which is going to be your center county, and then Cass County, which is just really a little bit of Kansas City. And then you have Harrisonville, Martin City. Those areas are going to be comprised mostly in Cass County. Now, Jackson County is where I live. So I live in the Brookside neighborhood, which is part of the Country Club District, which is the biggest master plan community ever developed by one developer. and it actually bleeds over a little bit into the Kansas side as well. It's a historic neighborhood in Kansas City, and that's where your Country Club Plaza is located. Jackson County is the second most populous county in the state of Missouri. So it's going to be pretty crowded in Jackson County, but you're also going to be able to accommodate pretty much all styles of living in Jackson County, whether it be you want to live downtown in a studio loft or a high-rise condo. You're also going to have a ton of historic districts with single family homes, and you can have off-street parking. You can have a lot of homes that don't have off-street parking. And a lot of the homes were built in the 1900s or early 1900s in the Country Club District, and a lot of that part of Kansas City. Jackson County is also going to be comprised of some of Lee Summit and Blue Springs, Independence. So those are also going to be part of Jackson County. And that is also where the Kauffman Stadium, Arrowhead Stadium for the Chiefs and Royals is located. So if that's important to you, Jackson County. So like, for instance, when the Chiefs have playoff games and the AFC Championship games that they've been going to recently, Jackson County residents, they get first dibs on those tickets. So there are some perks to living in Jackson County, but I also understand if you don't like the hustle and bustle of the city. That's just something that we were looking for actually when we moved back to Kansas City, having grown up in the suburbs of Kansas and living in Denver for 10 years in the suburbs there. We had an opportunity to live in the city in a historic home in a really walkable neighborhood, and that was really important to us when we moved back. Now, Clay County is everything north to the river on the Missouri side, and that's where you're going to find some of the top-rated suburbs in Kansas City, Missouri: Liberty, Gladstone, and North Kansas City, not to be confused with Kansas City North. North Kansas City is actually its own incorporated city, which again, it just gets really confusing. And that's why people reach out to us, because they're like, I don't get it. What's Kansas City? What's North Kansas City? What's Kansas City, Kansas? What's Kansas City, Missouri? You know, that's part of living in the Kansas City metro area. Is I frequent both sides of the state line on a daily basis. And, you know, a lot of people sometimes are uncomfortable with that. But again, it's really not that big of a deal, especially once you land here and you find the spot that works best for you. Also, in the Northland is what we refer to, you know, everything north of the river. That's where the airport's going to be. And we just had our new international airport just open up about a week ago. Shaquille O'Neal was just here because he opened a restaurant in the actual new terminal, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a big thing for our city, but if you're going to be traveling a lot, then the Northland might be a good fit for you because you're going to be closer proximity to the airport. Now, on the Kansas side, Kansas City, Kansas is comprised of pretty much just one county. It is Wyandotte County, and the population is about a quarter of what it is in Kansas City, Missouri. So it's a smaller city, and it doesn't really have, like, it has a downtown area, but you know, it's a small downtown. So it's nothing like downtown Kansas City, Missouri, where you have all these big high rises and skyscrapers and, you know, the streetcar and things like that. Now, Kansas City, Kansas also houses the Legend, which is a huge outdoor shopping mall in Kansas City, Kansas. This is really its own city, and you can accommodate pretty much all of your shopping out in that one area. It's about 30 minutes west of downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and the school district there is going to be different than the school district in Wyandotte County. We'll get into that in a little more detail here in a moment. But you'll also find the Kansas Speedway, where, you know, all the NASCAR races and stuff are. That's also where the American Royal, which is a barbecue event that takes place every September, is held. You're going to find Sporting KC's stadium out there as well. So that is the one professional sports team that falls on the Kansas side. And there's a lot of room for development. There are a lot of new houses out there near the Legends area. So if you're looking for something newer and, maybe new construction is something that you're seeking on the Kansas side, that is a great area because you never really have to leave there. And then you're only about 30 minutes from downtown. Should you have to get to Kansas City, Missouri for any reason, it's just a straight shot down I-70. The other cool thing is that it's about, I'd say about a 45-minute drive to Lawrence, which is where the University of Kansas is located. And there's just a ton of room out there. Okay, so let's talk about the schools. So you have a Kansas City Public School District for Kansas and Missouri. The Kansas City Public School District in Kansas, even though the population is about a quarter of what it is in Missouri, actually has a higher population of students. So you have about 22,000 students in the Kansas City, Kansas Public School District, and niche.com actually ranks it a C-. There is also going to be a separate school district. So if you do choose to live out in the Legends area in Kansas City, Kansas, that's going to fall under, a lot of it's going to fall under the Piper School District, which is a higher rated public school system, but it's a very small school district of only about 2,500 students. And then on the Missouri side, Kansas City Public Schools just got reaccredited. And again, we have, in Kansas City, Missouri, we have, over 500,000 people living in Kansas City, Missouri. But the public school system only has about 14,000 students. And a big reason for that is that there are more charter and private schools here in Kansas City, Missouri than there are public schools. And it's kind of been this big deal for the last 20 years here in Kansas City. And Kansas City Public Schools has really done a lot of work. They have a Blueprint 2030 plan in order to try and get the school system back on track. And again, they were just reaccredited last year, so they're already on the right track there. My kids, again, they go to the Kansas City Public School system, and we absolutely love it. It's a little bit tougher to navigate because you have all of these different options for school, whereas where my wife and I grew up in the Olathe area on the Kansas side, in the suburbs, where you live dictates where you go to school. Whereas in Kansas City, Missouri, it's not so much the case. We live in Brookside. We have a public school option for an elementary school in Hale Cook, and that's actually where one of my students goes. But my younger son, he goes to a Montessori school, which is actually a Kansas City public school as well, but it's on a lottery system. And so a lot of these charter schools and some of these signature public schools, which the Montessori school is one of those signature schools, they are on lottery systems, which again can make it overwhelming. Like when we were trying to get both boys into the same school over the summer, I had one kid that got accepted and another that was on the wait list all summer. Ultimately, we got him into the same school only to pull him out a couple of months later because it really wasn't a good fit, and he's back at Hale Cook. If you're liking the content so far, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It really does help with how YouTube ranks our videos. Let's talk about the suburbs a little bit. The main suburbs on the Missouri side are going to be, like I mentioned before, Gladstone, Liberty. You're going to have Parkville up north, North Kansas City. And then to the east, you're going to have Blue Springs. And then just south of that, you're going to have Lee Summit. Now, all of these suburbs have highly rated public schools and lots of amenities. Also, the great thing about living in Kansas City is, we're like a medium-sized metro area. So it doesn't take that long to get from one of these suburbs to downtown, 30 minutes tops, really. Now, on the Kansas side, you're going to have most of your suburbs fall in Johnson County, which is the fastest growing county in the state of Kansas, but it also houses 4 of the top 6 public school districts in the entire state of Kansas, including the #1 rated public school district, Blue Valley Schools. So you're going to have Overland Park, Olathe, Lenexa, Westwood, which is going to be a suburb, but it's going to be, kind of closer to downtown, Shawnee, a lot of those places. And then a little further south, you're going to have Spring Hill, and that kind of bleeds over into southern Overland Park as well. The trade-off is that you're going to pay a higher price point to live in Johnson County compared to the metro area at large. The median home price just last year in Johnson County was $402,000 compared to Kansas City's $250,000 median home price. So, whether you want to live in the suburbs or the city, you can definitely pay a higher price point to live in the city. But usually your budget goes a little further in terms of housing. If you do want to live in the city, private school could be an option. Ultimately, it could end up being about a wash. We live on a street with 26 kids where they all go to different schools. I mean, it was a little hard to get used to really when we first moved here because, again, we were used to growing up in the suburbs and we all went to school with the people on our block. Here, it's not the case. We have half the kids in private school, a third of them in charter schools, and then the rest in public schools. So if that's something that you're concerned about, then, Kansas City, Missouri may not be the right fit for you. But the great thing, again, is we are licensed in Kansas and Missouri. One of the things that we love to do with families is pull up the map on a Zoom call and really identify some of these areas and help you identify what your priorities are. And then typically we can suggest 3 or 4 different areas that you probably never even heard of. Now, a little bit more on the affordability. Again, you're going to pay a higher price point in the suburbs for housing, but the cost of living across state lines is pretty much a wash. I mean, gas prices, utility prices, property taxes, they're all about the same, with the exception of the 1% income tax in Kansas City, Missouri, which if you've watched our cost of living video, I talked about it a little more in depth there. Really, if you live or work in Kansas City, Missouri, you are going to be subject to this 1% income tax, which it is a good thing. The majority of voters in Kansas City voted in favor of this 1% tax. However, it is something that you need to keep in mind when you're calculating expenses and moving to Kansas City, because relocating anywhere can be expensive. And so a 1% tax could make a big difference on your budget. So that's something you need to be aware of. So there are some pros and cons to both sides of the state line. Again, ultimately, when people ask you where you're from or where you live, you're probably going to say Kansas City. You're not going to say Overland Park, Gladstone, Liberty. You're going to say Kansas City, right? And really what matters is, again, finding that fit for your family. And the only thing that we love more than living in Kansas City is helping people and families make that transition and that smooth move to our beloved city. So if you're considering relocating to Kansas City, or you're buying or selling a home in Kansas City, we would love to help you out with that, but you got to reach out to us. So shoot us a call, a text, an email, and we can get that set up with you to do a Zoom call and really pull up the map and find and identify these areas. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell to make sure that you're notified every time we drop a new video. We're releasing multiple videos every single week. So if you want to know everything about Kansas City, make sure you're subscribed, hit that thumbs up button. Until next time.